Happy Monday to everybody there on Facebook Live. We have what I think is going to be a highly interesting show today, a highly interesting show. In addition to covering some of the activity that took place over the weekend, and there was plenty of it, we also have a sensational guest today. His name is Qasim Eid. He is a Syrian refugee. And Tim, am I wrong in saying we've lost his feed?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. We had him on the line for quite some time, and he's been waiting. And now, just as we go on, he dropped off. I'm wondering if something wound up happening with those feeds, because it was that combination of live and everything else. But anyway, while we try to get his feedback up, and it should be a very interesting thing with him. You may have seen him. He was on CNN last week, and I think it was Brooke Baldwin, right?
Brooke Baldwin, yeah.
And he gave Brooke Baldwin a shellacking. I mean, there was no doubt it was a shellacking. Well, that's you. But he gave her a shellacking talking about the whole refugee process and the fact that President Trump did take the action that he did take in Syria. So it was very interesting, and hopefully we can get him back here and speak to him. I mean, he's been sitting there waiting for 10 minutes before we went live, and now it's showing that there's no answer. Yeah. But we'll get back to that. While Tim is trying to do that, Tim, why don't you put on camera 3 so we could see Harlan? All right. You can just leave it on camera 3 while you try to get it together. Harlan, why don't you go through the different items that we lived through this week while we try to get back this weekend while we try to get back Qasim.
Well, obviously, I think the story of the week last week was North Korea. They're posturing, they're flexing their muscles, they're standing up to the United States of America. And frankly, at points last week, it felt as if we could really be on the brink of war. And they made this big push around this notion that they were going to celebrate the 70th anniversary of Kim Jong-un's grandfather, and they were going to fire off some missile, and it was a dud. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of speculation and even some conspiracy theory that, maybe the United States had something to do with sabotaging that test. I don't know.
I wouldn't be surprised at all. First of all, hold on for a second. I see Qasim in the screen. Is he back on?
Yeah.
All right, can he hear me? Qasim, if you could hear me, nod.
Yes.
Okay, pal, just hold tight. We got you back. What we do here at the show, just this way you know, is we go through some of the news real quick for the first 2 minutes, and then we're going to bring you in and we're going to talk to you for quite some time, okay? So just
no problem.
Just stay still there for 1 second. So getting back to what you were saying about the hacking, that's one of the questions I wound up getting over the weekend.
Absolutely.
For the 3 emails, how I always respond to the emails every day?
Yeah.
DML, do you think that the U.S. had some sort of role in that? And my answer is yes.
It's certainly possible. It's either that or their technology it just isn't up to snuff. I don't know. Either way.
I'd like to think that the U.S. is doing something on that level.
Yeah.
Boy, we better hope they're doing something on that level, because that's what we're going to need to do.
Well, we saw with Iran that we were doing that. And so we were, even though they, in their nuclear centrifuges, they're not connected to the internet, but through some roundabout means, we were able to hack into their facility and spin up the centrifuges so fast that it ruined them in Iran. Mm-hmm. So the capabilities of the United States intelligence community are unparalleled, and so it certainly is possible.
I think another thing, important thing to bring up too, I loved this one. In fact, I had a almost like a little go back and forth with the family this weekend, because I promised that there would be no walk and talks this weekend. And I'll tell you, to a certain degree, it was sort of nice to take a break, was it not? Yeah. But I swore there would be no walk and talk. And I was reading an article, and I was seeing all the comments on it. I can't remember what site it was, but it was people were criticizing President Trump. I mean, slamming him, because his narrative, as they say, was changing towards China. They used to be a currency manipulator all throughout the entire campaign, right? All he said was China, 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 China. Now all of a sudden they're not a currency manipulator anymore. He's, opening his arms to them, whatever. And I'm reading between those lines.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go do a walk and talk to just tell people, because I could see the unrest. And my feeling was, is that President Trump is savvy enough and wise enough, and I know there's a little part of shadiness in this, but you have to do what you have to do to keep people safe.
Sure.
In the sense that I think he's telling China what they want to hear and what they need to hear.
Yes.
Because when he takes a look at currency manipulation and all-out war, you know,
it's easy. This is easy
it's
calculus.
an easy choice.
Yeah.
It's an easy choice. And to stop North Korea from what they're doing, really, we don't need China, but we would prefer China. It keeps things far more stable. Yeah. And so I was reading between the lines that what he's doing right now is giving them what they need to hear and want to hear.
Right.
And so I said, I got to keep my promise, no walk and talk. And I kind of just ate it. And then the next day, he puts out a tweet that basically says, hey man, read between the lines.
Yeah.
I'm telling these people what they want to hear.
Absolutely.
You know, and so the only thing about that tweet is that, you know, China also sees that tweet.
Yeah,
you know
absolutely.
what I mean? So, I mean, you know, that's...
But they know. They're sophisticated enough to know. So,
of course they know. Of course they know.
And they're getting something out of it too. They can put this trade dispute off for at least a little while longer. It's a win for everybody while we resolve North Korea.
All right, last item really to hit quick before we bring in Kasim, because I know everybody wants to hear what he has to say, and I have a lot of questions for him. I know you do too. There is a psycho lunatic out on the prowl right now. There's a 5-state alert. This gentleman, he's an African-American man. He just decided on Facebook Live yesterday that he was going to drive up to an elderly man of all people. I mean, what a wimp, right?
Yeah.
What a wimp. And drive up to an elderly man, and he just gets out of the car, and we have at least the first part of the video. We shut it down right as he's about to pull the gun. But he drives up to a man. He's on Facebook Live. He drives up to an elderly man, another black man. He gets out of the car. He starts talking to him. The elderly man doesn't understand really what's going on because they're speaking so quick. And he says, hey, listen, you can thank, and he says, I think his girlfriend or whoever it is, that this is why I did this to you. And he rips out the gun. And the old man, you can see, who's 74 years old, he's got 9 children and a whole parade of grandchildren and great-grandchildren. You could see, you know, the fear in his face, just saying, please, 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 what are you doing? And boom, boom, the man is now dead. And now this guy takes off, and there's a massive manhunt for him in 5 different states. So the alert is out there. If you're in Ohio, Michigan, New York, Pennsylvania, Maryland, you know, all these different surrounding states around Ohio, they have a all points bulletin out for this guy. And boy, do I hope they catch him. Yeah. But what a dirtbag! What a total dirtbag!
Trash.
Right? All right. Well, that being said, we're going to be we're going to bring in somebody right now who is anything but a dirtbag. This man has I've watched some of his interviews. He is so respectable. I love everything that's so far that I've heard come out of his mouth. His name is, I want to make sure I say it the right way.
Kasim Eid.
Kasim Eid. And Kasim Eid is a Syrian refugee who I believe, and he'll be able to correct me if I'm wrong, is right now living in Washington, D.C. Is that correct?
I think he's in Germany right now.
No, actually in Germany.
He's in Germany. I'll let you know what I know. Where did I get Washington, D.C. from? But he's in Germany, and he was recently on CNN. We're going to play a clip. You're not going to be able to hear it, Kasim. You're not going to be able to hear it, but it's a clip of you being on CNN. Let us play it, and Harlan Hill will come back with a question for you. Play it, Tim.
We cannot in one breath speak of protecting Syrian babies and in the next close America's doors to them.
Quickly, Qasim, how do you see that?
With all due respect, I didn't see each and every person who was demonstrating after the travel ban. I didn't see you 3 days ago when people were gassed to death, when civilians were gassed to death. I didn't see you in 2013 when 1,400 people were gassed to death. I didn't see you raising your voice against President Obama's inaction in Syria that led us refugees, that made us refugees get kicked out of Syria. If you really care about refugees, if you really care about helping us, please help us stay in our country. We don't want to come to the United States.
You gave it pretty good to CNN there. You were exposing their hypocrisy, explaining that, you know, where were they? You were asking where were they when President Obama ignored the pleas of Syrians after thousands of them were massacred. Potentially, you could have even been a victim. You're lucky to have survived it back in 2013. Were people in the mainstream media, were they resistant to let you tell this side of the story, to expose President Barack Obama and the left's hypocrisy on this issue when it came to their inaction on the atrocities that have happened in Syria?
First, thank you so much for having me. Well, to be honest, I'm an honest person, so I'm gonna speak the truth. We did not discuss what we're going to say during the interview. They just wanted to interview chemical weapons survivor. And during the talk, I did two interviews with CNN. An interview before the strike that President Trump launched against the dictator in Syria, and another interview after the strike. And I think the clip you played is from the other interview after the strike.
Right, yes.
So they were actually kind to give me the chance to speak as a survivor of the chemical weapons massacre in 2013, and also as a refugee. They did not shut me down. They didn't stop me from talking or drop the connection. Mm-hmm. So I think this is a positive thing we should mention as well. I just spoke my heart, and I think I spoke in behalf of millions and millions of Syrians when I said that Syrians want to stay in Syria. We don't want to come to the United States or Europe or anywhere else in the world. We just want to stay in our country. And if it wasn't for, if President Obama actually did something to stop the lunatic, the criminal Bashar al-Assad from killing 500,000 people and displacing more than 12 million people during the past 6 years, we would have been in our country right now, rebuilding it and having free elections and looking for a democracy or a new government to lead our people into a better future. This is what we've been asking for more than 6 years. President Obama just watched us die and gave us a lot of broken promises that let us become refugees.
Qasim, let me jump in here with a question. And I apologize for thinking that you were in Washington, D.C. I'm looking at my notes here, and it says that you are being brought to Washington, D.C., and I bet you that's still not even true as well. I don't know where my notes are getting confused, but I apologize. But more importantly than that, have you ever been to Washington, D.C.?
Yeah, of course. I lived in the States for almost 2 years, from 2014, right after I was forced to leave Syria. I came to the United States to testify and talk to the media and the U.S. government about the war crimes in Syria. I stayed for almost 2 years between Washington and New York, where I spoke in front of the Congress, Senate, White House, DOD, State Department, and a lot of think tanks, universities, and public events. Did a lot of media work, and unfortunately, nothing happened, nothing changed. There was a lot of good people, a lot of people inside and outside the U.S. government who really wanted to help, but they were all blocked by President Obama. So at the end of mid-2016, I decided to leave the United States because I felt it's hopeless to try to get any help from President Obama. And unfortunately, I was right, because things only got worse. And I came here to Germany, and I was hoping that maybe I'll be able to come back again and see if there's some real action that's going to happen in Syria to help us refugees come back to Syria.
All right, so then just so this way I've got all this correct, because I have some questions I want to ask you that relate to you coming here to the U.S. When you came to the U.S. and you spoke to Congress and you spoke to different media outlets, did you come here as an official refugee?
No, I didn't. I actually came on a tourist visa.
On a tourist visa. Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So now
Yes.
I want to take you back to Syria. Unfortunately, we now, and you probably know this, unfortunately, we live in a world, especially here in the United States, where a term fake news has erupted, evolved, taken shape, what have you. I see you nodding your head, so you know all about fake news. And so because we have this fake news thing, so many people are grasping at who it is and who it is they do not believe. And so I want to ask you something specific to your time in Syria, because there is a narrative that is going around the country here that Assad did not perform these attacks on his own people. And one of the follow-up questions, it's really, a rhetorical question, if you will, is why would he put a chemical attack on his own people? So what I'd like you to do for me, if you will, and you and I have never spoke before going into today, so I have no idea what you're about to say. Number one is, do you believe that Assad did launch that chemical attack on his people? And if you do, not only from your own experience of being in Syria, what do you say to those folks who say Assad didn't do this, it's fake news?
Okay. Well, let me start by just commenting on the term fake news, because we in Syria suffered from fake news for a long time, for 6 years now, or even a lot more than 6 years. Going back in time, I grew up in Syria. I was born and raised in Syria. I grew up in a dictatorship where the government was controlling all aspects of life in Syria, including the media. In that government media outlets, the United States was always described to us as the great devil, or the imperialist evil power, and a lot of bad names that I'm not going to say on air. Mm-hmm. And I actually learned my English from reading Reader's Digest magazine, and it was actually forbidden in Syria. My late father used to smuggle it. And what I was reading, I started to know that there is actually a better and a bright side of the picture that about the West and about the United States, and what we've been taught in school on daily life is actually a lie. So during the revolution, the regime always killed people and denied responsibility. They massacre civilians, and then they say we had nothing to do with it. They are the only side who have airplanes, and when they bomb civilian populations, they say we don't know who did it. And that was a long time before there was any international interference in Syria. So we know a lot about fake news. We know a lot about bad people doing bad things and claiming that others did it. And in the States, I know people suffered from this a lot, especially during the election. And there was a lot of fake news, a lot of propaganda coming on the internet with a lot of conspiracy theories and a lot of crazy stories. So I think everybody right now are making an effort to find out the truth, and this is something very important. Going back to Assad, I was in Syria my entire life. In the chemical massacre in 2013, after I almost died from that massacre. 5 days later, the United Nations sent a weapons inspectors team from the OPCW, and I helped them investigate the incident. When they went to the hospitals and they examined the patients, they examined the missiles that were used to launch the attack. They took blood samples and tissues and different kinds of evidence, and they wrote a full report putting the responsibility on the Assad regime. So there was also at that time, there was a lot of conspiracy theories and a lot of propaganda about who actually did the attack. And for people who doesn't know a lot about chemical weapons. Chemical weapons are weapons of mass destruction. It's very hard to obtain and very hard to launch and very hard to use. You need a lot of logistic support and a lot of resources to be able to produce or use chemical weapons, kind of resources that only the Assad regime have. And yesterday I was reading an article on FoxNews.com, and they were referring to the long history between the Assad regime and North Korea, which North Korea helped the Assad regime to build their chemical weapons arsenal. And there's a lot of intelligence reports about that. So people should know that there is an alliance between dictatorships in this world. There is a lot of bad things that happen, and bad people are trying to block the truth. If you're thinking why Assad launched such an attack, it's very simple. Using chemical weapons, it's a message. It was a message all the time. Chemical weapons are a weapon of terror. And every time Assad uses that weapon, he sends a message for inside and outside of Syria. For Syrians, it says that nobody's going to help you, and I can do whatever I want, just like I did for the past 6 years, and no one is going to do anything. And especially after President Trump was elected, Assad wanted to test the water and see how the United States will react. Will they just watch and make statements like President Obama did for 6 years, or would they actually do something about it? So it was actually a test, and they failed. They didn't know that there's a new administration in the White House that will not tolerate war crimes and war criminals in Syria. And what President Trump did proved Assad wrong, and proved his allies wrong, and hopefully there will be more action to stop that criminal from launching more attacks.
All right, Qassem, let me jump in for 1 second. I want to tell everybody else who you are, because we have our crowd always sort of grows as we get closer to the noon hour here in the States. We have a gentleman with us. He is a Syrian refugee. His name is Qassem Eid. Do I have that right? Qassem Eid.
Yes.
He is coming to us today from Germany. He is a survivor of a chemical attack in Syria under the Assad regime back in 2013. He is going to be with us now for pretty much most of the Walk and Talk show. And I ask you, please, right now, if you're watching, hit the share button, will you? Let's get this audience climbing for this gentleman. He's got such incredible things to say. So far, what we've asked him is, can he confirm the fact that Assad is the person who's done these chemical attacks? And he says, by far he is. And he gave all the reasons why, and they sound pretty legitimate to me. Second thing is he addressed fake news and said, yeah, we've been dealing with fake news for 6 years over there in Syria. And again, as in case you just tied in late, he was here in the U.S. for a couple of years. He came over on a tourist visa. He was in front of Congress. He spoke to various people within the media. He was trying to make a plea for President Obama at the time to help the situation in there. He's not very fond of President Obama. You're welcome. You're hitting welcoming crowds here. Let me tell you that, Qassem. And he is very encouraged by what it is that President Trump has done with Syria over the past week in reaction to the chemical attacks that took place. That said, I'm going to hand it over to Harlan Hill. He has another question for you, Qassem.
So you spoke highly of President Donald Trump's response to the Assad regime's crossing of the red line that President Barack Obama originally drew in the sand over the use of chemical weapons. President Obama refused to enforce that red line. President Donald Trump did. If Hillary Clinton had been elected, do you think, and just a real quick answer, do you think that she would have enforced this red line, or would she have been a continuation of the Obama administration?
Well, actually, I do not know. I don't know about the future. I don't know. I really don't know if she will actually do something or not. But what I do know for sure, that what President Trump did was amazing and was a powerful message of hope that Syrians really needed to hear and to watch, and was also a powerful message for all the other dictators in the world, that the days of walking away without accountability are over.
Right.
We are watching what's going on even with North Korea, and not just with Assad, and that shows people that the true nature of President Trump, which is a man of action and a man of logic, and also a man with a big heart, because he's standing up for dictators instead of making deals with them like President Obama used to do.
I have a question, a couple of questions for you. First of all, there is a great concern here in this country, Qasem, and that is that if we take out Assad, who is going to fill that void? The last time the United States got involved in a situation like this, we took out Saddam Hussein, and what we did was we gave birth to ISIS. So with the concern of not knowing who would fill his role, I have a double question for you. Number one, what would you, as being somebody who lived in Syria all of his life, what would you suggest in terms of the United States, in terms of taking out Assad? Is it something that you think and your people think that it could be done and should be done? I want you to comment on that. And number two, what would be the fear of ISIS being able to go in and take even further control of areas that they've already started to penetrate in Syria?
Okay. I've been hearing this question for the past 6 years. And every time I answer in the very same way. You're talking about a man who killed hundreds of thousands of his own people, who gassed thousands of people to death, who displaced millions of people outside of their country, who raped thousands of women and killed thousands and thousands of children. You're talking about a man who destroyed over 80% of Syria's infrastructure. You're talking about a man who used to help Al-Qaeda against the United States in 2005 and 2003. You're talking about a man who supports the terrorist group of Hezbollah and give them weapons and missiles to attack Israel. You're talking about a man who is well connected with almost each and every dictator on this world. So my answer is very simple. Anybody who will replace Assad will be a better president than Bashar al-Assad. And for people who fear that we are going to have ISIS instead of Assad, just some simple fact-checking will show you that the very first group that actually fought ISIS were the Syrian rebels back in 2013, at the end of 2013 in northern Aleppo. And in that time, the Syrian rebels asked help from the United States to fight ISIS, because they noticed they are well trained and they have a lot of experience, that they cannot fight without help, without tow missiles or other advanced weapons. And at that time, they asked the help from the United States, and President Obama's comments were that ISIS are just a bunch of amateurs and they're not worth this kind of action. 4 months later, ISIS, the amateurs, took over Mosul and established their caliphate. Yesterday, I read in the Time magazine, they were doing a study about the top 5 countries that actually send ISIS fighters, fighters who belong to ISIS from the top 5 countries, and Syria was not on the top 5, or maybe on the top 7 of the countries who actually give ISIS fighters. That should show you how much ISIS is not popular in Syria. We did not rebel and lose our families and our lives to replace a political dictator with a religious dictator. We want to live free. We want to have free elections. And we are in full support of taking out the Assad regime. It's not as hard as people think. President Trump destroyed more than 20% of his air force in less than 10 minutes. So you can just do the math how easily it is to take out Assad. But what we really need to happen after taking out Assad is to have an international coalition and protection to sponsor free elections in Syria, to help civilians come back to Syria and rebuild, so they will be able to feel free to vote, because the vacuum of inaction that President Obama did in Syria. He created a vacuum for ISIS to come to people and tell them, look, the West doesn't care about you. America doesn't care about you. Assad has been killing you for years. Nobody helps you. We're here to help. Well, we should take that recruitment tool out of ISIS hands. We should show them that the United States actually care, that the West actually care, that there is something called international law and human rights, and there is someone else who can come and help you. We need accountability. We need justice in Syria. Otherwise, we will just keep giving ISIS and other extremist groups recruitment tools to go to people who got hurt, and there are so many in Syria. We're talking about millions and millions. Over 60% of the population of Syria is displaced. They will keep coming to people and tell them, nobody is here to help you. If you can't find justice, we will help you get revenge. We should stop them from doing that.
Qasim, let me ask you two questions. Ones that I'm seeing. We get a pretty decent crowd here on our Facebook Lives, and by the time this is all done today and into tomorrow, this will be viewed about 100,000 times. And so I want to ask you two questions which I've seen pop up. And in one of these questions here, I mean no disrespect to you whatsoever. We're just asking a legitimate question that are on people's minds.
No problem.
Okay. I'm going to give it to you in twofold, and I ask you to be as quick with your answers as you possibly can, because I know that Harlan's sitting here chomping at the bit to ask you something as well. Number one, who are in fact the rebels? And number two, if when you look at the Syrian refugees that are going into Europe or wherever it is that they're going off to, quite often you see men like yourself that look like, able-bodied, healthy men. How is it that your country is ever going to be able to fight back if there are so many men fleeing as refugees?
Okay. Well, answering the first questions, the Syrian rebels are normal people from all different parts of Syria. We're talking about doctors and teachers and pharmacists and normal people, day-to-day people. And we're also talking about military defectors who refuse to shoot their own people, who refuse to follow orders and shoot at the peaceful demonstrations in the early days of the revolution. Ambassador Robert Ford, who was the U.S. ambassador to Syria, he went to a lot of those demonstrations himself. He went to Hama, he went to Damascus, he went to Homs, and he saw with his own eyes the demonstrations. He saw the Syrian people, Muslims and Christians from all different religious and ethnic backgrounds, men and women and even children chanting and dancing for freedom and asking for democracy, for free elections in Syria. This is who we are. The Syrian rebels are just normal Syrians who wanted to see change in their country. And going back to the other part of the question, yes, you're right. I am a healthy man and I am able to fight. And so is hundreds of thousands or maybe millions of men like me. And we've been asking for help for more than 6 years. We've been asking for the international community, and starting with the United States, to come and help us, to give us arms and weapons and training so we can defend our country and make sure that we will have what we want, which is freedom. But unfortunately, again, President Obama did nothing for more than 6 years. And again, going back to what I was talking about, the only people who showed up with weapons and experience were extremist groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda. And that's why they managed to recruit people. But people like me, a lot of people like me who were not able to fight or refused to join extremist groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS, we found our only way was to get kicked out of our own country. So don't blame us and don't judge us before you know our story. If you lived in Syria for a year, during the revolution, and you watched your house getting bombed every day, getting gassed with chemical weapons, to see children getting shred to pieces by bombardment, or to see them actually starving to death due to your own government siege, then come and talk to me about why people left their own country.
Qasim, as I see it, there was a turning point in your life, and it happened on August 21st, 2013, when you woke up in the dark around 4:45 a.m., struggling to breathe, your eyes were burning, your head was throbbing, your throat was blocked, and you were suffocating. And you tried to inhale, and all you heard was a horrible rasping sound as your throat closed up. Unbearable pain drummed in your head, and the world began to blur. Your chest was pounding, you couldn't breathe, your heart seemed like it was going to explode. Until that moment, you were a normal, everyday guy, Syrian, and your world was turned upside down. Can you just quickly tell me, what did you do? Like, were you a student at this time? What?
I was actually, the chemical weapons attack happened on August 21st, 2013.
Mm-hmm.
The Syrian revolution started in March 15, 2011.
Mm-hmm.
I was studying English translation in Homs, which is a city away from Damascus, 2 hours away from Damascus. And I was also working in the Four Seasons Damascus hotel. But I stopped working a couple of months before the revolution started because I wanted to focus on my studies. I've been studying for more than 3 years. But at the time the chemical attack happened, I was living under siege, under government siege for more than a year and a half. We've been suffering from daily bombardment and invasion attempt. We didn't have power for more than a year. We didn't have food. The regime bombed all the hospitals we had. We only had one field hospital, which was basically a basement in a building with almost zero medical equipments or electricity to help people. More than 10,000 people were living under that brutal siege.
Let me ask you this. You said now that you're in Germany. And
yes.
Again, I'm going to be the devil's advocate in a lot of these questions, okay? It's my job. Germany has been turned upside down by all the Syrian refugees that have come in there. And there are numerous stories, Qasim, numerous stories of rapes and beatings and unruly men who have come over from Syria and who have just turned that place upside down. Why is that? Why is that sort of behavior something that comes with, maybe it's just the stain on the Syrian refugee, but I mean, you get, this kind of thing, Qasim, this is all over the place. You hear about people in Sweden, people in Germany, people all over the place are talking about the fact that, come over there and it's a different culture. Why is that the way it is in Syria? I mean, is that sort of thing permitted, and is it sort of acceptable? Why, what's going on with that?
Okay. Well, first of all, we're going to go back to the very first point we talked about, which is fake news and propaganda. According to the German government, refugees are actually less likely to commit crimes than Germans. Germans actually commit 5 times more crimes than refugees do. Again, going back to the propaganda and the fake news, there's a lot of reports and a lot of fake news about what's going on over there. Yes, there is some incidents that happened by refugees, but you're talking about more than 1 million refugees who actually came to Germany, more than 1.5 million across Europe. So if you will hear about 10 or 20 incidents out of 1.5 million, you can just do the math and figure out one out of how many will actually commit such a crime. People who risked their lives and took the death boats and walked for days and days to get to Europe. They didn't come to rape and kill and do whatever. They came to start over, or at least most of them. You cannot have a 100% good people from any country. You have bad people even in the States. You were just talking a few minutes ago about a man in the States who went and shot an elderly man and live streamed it on Facebook. Does that man represent all of Americans? Of course not. Why should we just pick or cherry pick in a bad way just the things that a few people commit and make and paint everyone in the same brush? This is not fair. If someone did something bad, that doesn't mean everybody is bad. Sometimes in your own family, you will have a good brother and a bad brother. You might have someone who do bad things and someone who do good things. And going back again to what I said, refugees are less likely, like 5 times less likely to commit criminal activities from Germans themselves. And this is according to the German government, not according to me or anybody else.
Okay, and I appreciate your answer, and I can see that there's a lot of passion behind it. And I will say you are correct in the sense that the guy, here we are on Facebook Live right now, and then you've got a guy yesterday who was on Facebook Live. He shoots somebody. I'm not shooting somebody. And so you're saying, hey, Dennis Michael Lynch, do you want to be blamed as a shooter because somebody else who uses Facebook Live does that? And I understand where you're coming from on that. But I don't want to see people not listen to your message. And that's what they will do. They will tune you out. I'm giving you a little friendly U.S. advice here. I've been in the media for a long time. If you're just going to try to put, hey, it's just a few people who are committing these crimes, you know, videos don't lie. And we have seen the videos that have come from Germany. We've seen the videos that have come from Europe. And I mean, they're frightening, to be quite honest. And, you know, so America is sort of afraid that that sort of thing is going to come here. I'll give you a prime example, okay? There aren't many stories here in the U.S. where you've got teenagers raping a 5 or 6 year old child. And we've had that here in the U.S. from people who have come over as refugees. So when we hear these sort of stories, we're very concerned about it. The other thing, and I want to change focus here, but stay within the same sphere, if you will, is I ask you a question. You don't have to answer it if you don't want to, but are you a Christian or are you Muslim?
Okay. First, going back to your advice, which is really appreciated, I did not mean to offend anyone with my answer. I just wanted to ask people to put themselves in our shoes, to try to imagine how does it feel like to be a good person and then get blamed for other people bad action.
Totally understand. I totally listen.
We
Sam,
sure
let me
understand that there is, like I said, there is incidents and there is bad activities by some of those refugees, and I'm totally with deporting each refugee who commit such criminal activities, because us refugees are the ones who are getting affected even before the own country, because we're getting blamed for some things that other people are doing. Most of us came here looking for safety and security. Some of us came here looking to start over. So we don't want to be blamed for other people's activities. And going back to other part of your question, yes, I'm a Muslim and I'm proud to be a Muslim.
Oh, great. All right. So I want to ask you a couple of questions regarding that, okay? So,
Yes.
All right. You know, here in the U.S., you know, you've criticized President Barack Hussein Obama, and we do too. We do not think he was a good president. In fact, personally, speaking for myself, I can't speak for Harlan, but I think he is the worst, the second worst, and the third worst president we've ever had in this country. He has fundamentally transformed it into something many of us don't recognize anymore. So although we are not being attacked by our own leader in terms of physically attacked, I will never pretend, ever pretend to understand what you're going through like that. But we do understand what it is like to have somebody in charge who is just stripping away and shredding away decades and centuries of hard work. The man, President Obama, He fundamentally transformed this country. And I will tell you one thing that this country, many of us are very uncomfortable with. When we look at the amount of refugees that we have taken from the Middle East, specifically as well with the Syrian refugees, 99% of them, over 99% of them, have been of the Muslim religion. And a lot of times they come over here and they cannot fit in with our Judeo-Christian lifestyle. And they want Sharia law, and they want their menu a certain way. And the Quran says in many different instances that I would look better with my head chopped off because I'm an infidel. So there are different things that Americans are very concerned about this with the refugee crisis, because we believe, many of us, that we need to have better vetting in place. So this way we don't have people coming through the cracks. You talked about how in Germany, there might be 1 million refugees, and maybe it's 50,000 who are creating the issues, or 20,000 who are creating the issues, or 10,000 who are creating the issues. But if you're the woman who's raped, all you care about is the one who created the issue. So I come back and I ask you, you are a Muslim man, and everything I've heard come out of your mouth for the most part has been extremely intelligent and passionate, and I appreciate it. But you have to explain to me, as somebody who doesn't necessarily understand Islam from top to bottom, why it is that this religion has a stain on it, which that stain spells hate.
Okay, well, this is, again, a very important question, because we keep hearing such conversations, and I think I should try to set the record straight. First, let me start with the way we salute, the way Muslims salute Muslims and other people. We start by saying Assalamu alaikum, which is what means may peace be upon you. A religion that calls for hate won't start their conversations with peace. There's a lot of misunderstanding for our religion, and that's something that the extremists played on. There's a lot of verses in the Quran that calls for love and calls for accepting others, and calls for Muslims to lead by giving a better example about who we are, and not about killing, not about raping, not about doing anything bad. Actually, over 80% of Quran is laws for how to live your life in a better way, how to be a better father or a better neighbor, a better person in your own community. So this is how we were raised on our religion. But extremist groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda looked for verses in Quran. They took them out of their course and used them to recruit ignorant people who doesn't really understand what Islam is. And unfortunately, this was the way we got labeled again. Like I was talking before about how refugees suffer from propaganda or other people's acts. We also, as Muslims, we suffer the most. ISIS killed more than 50,000 people in Syria and Iraq. Over 45,000 people were Muslims from the ones that ISIS killed. So you're talking about more than 90% of the people ISIS killed were actually Muslims. And they accuse everyone to be an infidel, or anybody who disagree with them is someone bad who you need to kill.
Hold on, Qassem. I have to cut you off. Hold on, I have to cut you off at something.
Billion Muslims.
Hold on.
We are not all like this.
I know. I understand. And by no means, we are a very fair team here, Harlan and I. And we are not looking to put you into a bucket with ISIS or anybody who wants to chop anybody's head off. What I am trying to do is address to you, there were some things that you had said about Germany and about how people are getting unfairly bucketed. And, I'm trying for you to understand it's not just all propaganda, pal. I mean, I can tell you I've been interviewing people for years. I've had people who are now Christians and have converted over from Islam because they say that they're very uncomfortable with that 20% of the Quran which you talk about. You're talking about that it's justified to hit your wife, the obedience of hitting a wife. I mean, so there are anti-gay, there are anti-women parts of the Quran which we don't understand here in the United States. We don't practice that whatsoever, and anybody who does practice that is basically shunned against. So, when you say that 80% of the Quran is good, it's not the 80% we're worried about; it's the 20%.
Well, with all due respect, sir.
Yes.
I am proud of all the Quran that we have. I'm proud of the way we understand it. You can get 10 people to read the same text, and you might have 10 different point of views for the same text you're reading. It's not about the text. It's about the people who are actually reading and trying to get verses out of their context. So it's not about, the problem doesn't lay in Quran. The problem actually lays in the people who are trying to read and get what they want to see from that text.
Okay, so then let me ask you.
If you're looking for good, if you're looking for being a good example, you will find what you want. If you are just a man who are looking for evil means to recruit people, you will try to twist and get verses out of their context and use them to tell other people, look, there's a verse here that says that you are allowed to kill. Yes, there's verses that say that, but if you go back to the verses before in the same text, it will say that if you got kicked out of your country and if you were attacked and your family was attacked and your house was destroyed, then you are allowed to fight back and allowed to defend yourself.
Fine.
And your family.
Then I want to ask you a question, because you just said something that I think is very, very important, and I do not want to make any mistakes whatsoever. I do not want to misrepresent anything about you, because you're very brave to be doing all the interviews you are doing with the American press, including us, okay? You're a very brave man. I have no denial in that whatsoever, and I commend you for standing up and trying to get the message out. You're saying that the Quran is based on interpretation. So I need to understand where you interpret something. Do you believe that it is right for a husband to be able to discipline his wife physically for what he would say is, disobedient behavior? Do you believe that part? I mean, how else can I interpret that part of the Quran, Qassem? So do you agree with that?
Well, sir, let me tell you something. My fiance is actually Christian. My closest friends and my book editors are Jewish. My lawyer, he's actually Hispanic, and he's a member of a LGBT community. So that should tell you about who I am and who a lot of Muslims are. We do not judge others, and we don't ask others to judge us. We are part of same race. We all believe that we come back to Adam and Eve. We all worship the same God. And especially Muslims, we believe in Jesus' return. We believe in his miracles. It's a part of our faith to believe in all prophets from Adam to Muhammad. So there's a lot of good things you have to know about Islam before you will ask me about this verse. Everybody can read what they want to read from the Quran. If you're looking for good, you will find good. If you want to get verses out of their text, that's like
Qassam, you're not answering my question.
like
With
your
all due
own
respect,
problem.
with all due respect,
I'm
Qassam, you're
not
not
an
answering my
expert.
question.
I just want to add one comment. I'm not an expert. I'm not a priest or an imam to discuss each and every verse of Quran we have. There is thousands and thousands of them, and I don't think you can get any random person and ask him about the Bible or the Torah. So
No, Qassam, I'm
I
gonna
know.
severely disagree with you on this one, and I will tell you that I'm reading the comments. You're not answering the question. You said to me point blank, and I'm not looking to argue with you. I'm looking to have a real man-to-man conversation. You said to me point blank that you are a very proud Muslim. And then when I brought up some of the other things about concerns here in America when it comes to the faith of Islam, you said to me, listen, that's based on how people want to interpret things. And I asked you a very, very clear question. Do you believe in wife beatings as a Muslim man? Because that is justified in the Quran. And you told me that you have,
not.
hold on, you told me that you have Hispanic
Of
friends and
course not.
LBGT, but you
Of
did
course
not answer
not.
the question.
Okay, of course not. I do not believe in that. And again, the verse, if I'm not mistaken, it's again taking out of its course. Me, as a person, as a Muslim, I am against any kind of violence, whether against your wife, your sister, anybody. We are against violence. We don't believe in violence.
So then you don't believe. Then you don't believe. Then you don't believe in a portion of the Quran as a Muslim.
Well, sir, again, you will find what you want to find. And if you want to Google this, you will find that there's actually more verses about violence in the Bible than it is in the Quran. And this is something you can find and you can check and fact check by yourself. But again, people will find what they want to find. It's the text, again, it's there. You will find what you want to find. I believe that we should be better people. I believe that the Bible, the Quran, the Torah, all the books that God gave us were sent to us to be better people, not to be evil, not to hurt others, not to eliminate others, to accept others, to all live together as one, not to discriminate people or judge others. I believe that we can all live together in peace and harmony as long as there's a true intention for us to accept our differences. We cannot ask everyone to have the same belief and the same in almost everything. Sometimes diversity makes you stronger, and I believe this is one of the most powerful things that the United States have, which is diversity. If it wasn't for the diversity,
let me jump in there for a second. Let me jump in there for a second. Let me jump in for a second. We are a very diverse nation, and we open our arms to more people from around the world than all countries combined. That's the actual statistics. And so we take in people from every walks of life, from every religion, you name it. So you came here to the U.S. on a tourist visa, and you decided ultimately that it wasn't for you, and then you went back to Germany. If you were to come here in the U.S., if you were to seek to be a resident or a citizen of the U.S., would you understand why it is that we do not want Sharia law in this country?
Well, again, sir, for talking about the Sharia law, actually, it's a part of our religion to accept every country's laws wherever we go. If you're living in the States, you have to live by the United States laws. If you're living in Germany, you have to live by Germany's laws. If you live in any other country, you have to live by their own law. The only way we go to Sharia law is within like the way you perform your prayers, or the way you perform the fasting or something like this. This is the only way we use the Sharia law, where we're living outside Muslim countries. Wherever you are in the country, you have to live by the country's law, not by your own law. This is a part of our faith. And again, people are trying to get things out of their context, or trying to misunderstand the religion. And unfortunately, the true understanding should be highlighted, not the negative things. If you want to help solve the problem, you have to highlight the positive things, so people will have the better knowledge of the religion, not to highlight what bad people are doing or what they are trying to harm, so they can create hate and divide people. And I know that the United States has opened their arms for people from all over the world, and this is something I really truly respect. And if I will ever be a U.S. citizen, of course I will live by the laws of the United States of America. I'm not going to live by my own laws or my religion law. I will respect the law of the land where I'm living in, because this is what my religion tells me to do, to respect the law of the land.
Let me ask you this. Do you think that the United States is doing its part in taking the Syrian refugees? Because there's a lot of people here in this country that do not want to take the amount of people we're taking in. We want it to be far less. We feel as if the numbers, so many of us, this is one of the reasons why we elected President Trump, somebody you have spoken very highly of. He said he was going to put a ban. He said he tried to put a ban, and the courts gave him a hard time about it. He wanted to limit and almost eliminate people that were coming in from that region. Can you understand, for all the different things, whether or not we don't want Islamic terrorists coming over here? We don't want people who believe in beating their wives is okay. We don't want people who, unlike you, will say that Sharia law trumps all other laws. Do you understand why it is that Americans are not happy, or I should say many Americans are not happy about us taking in refugees?
Of course I do, sir.
Okay.
And I totally understand the concerns and all the fears that people are facing. Unfortunately, ISIS and Al-Qaeda drew a very bad image of Islam and a very bad image about Muslim countries. And again, good people are paying the price of that. I understand the security concerns and all the fears that people have. Again, all what we want as refugees is to go back and live safe and free in our own countries. We don't want to come to the United States or Europe or anywhere else. We want to stay in our own country. We've been asking for help for more than 6 years so we can stay and live in our own country. And this is what we all want. I understand any laws or security measures that the president has to do. He's trying his best to keep his people safe. And I understand, again, that the terrorist acts of groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda had brought harm to Muslims and to refugees, because they used refugees as a cover to come and commit their terrorist acts. And speaking in which, I just want to highlight something, and maybe there's this video, I will send it to you so you can show people on your show. The Assad regime top cleric, which is the top religion man in Syria, a government religion man, he threatened to send suicide bombers and attack the United States and Europe if anybody tried to do anything against Bashar al-Assad. It's in video, and people must see the true nature of that regime, and must know how dictators help creating extremists and suicide bombers, so they can bring fear to the West as a way to pressure them, and they can also bring fear to their own people to stop them from asking what it's rightfully theirs, which is freedom.
You know, Kassam,
there's a lot of different.
let me jump in with something, because Harlan has a question for you, and I'm looking at the clock. We have to wind this up because we're a little bit over an hour, and we have to cut it off. I do have a quick question for you, and then Harlan's going to ask you a question. You could answer them both at the same time. And then we're going to have to wrap it up. If I have not come, I mean, at one point when I asked you about the wife beatings, it was sort of as if you were stumbling over your words a little bit. And then I point blanked it to you, and you said, no, that you don't agree with wife beating. My question to you is, if a brother Muslim, so to say, were to hear you say that, if they were to hear you to say that you condemned, showing a wife her place if she does wrong, would they have a problem with you saying that? That's my question. Harlan, you're up.
Yeah, I mean, my question is more focused on where you're going, because it sounds like, I mean, you spoke before Congress here in the United States appealing for intervention in Syria. You went before the UN, or you've been at the UN advocating for intervention in Syria. You're writing this book, you're doing TV. You've talked a lot about elections, democratic elections happening again at some point in Syria. Are you going to go back home, and is your role in the resurrection of Syria to run for office there?
Thank you for the questions. First, I'm pretty sure all my Muslim friends who hear this episode will totally agree with me and totally support what I said, because this is how this is what our religion tells us to do, and this is the true understanding of our religion. I just want to point out that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, after his wife died, when he used to see her friends, he used to take off his cave and put it for them on the ground to step on it if there was a dirt or something bad on the ground, and say that this is how I honor the memory of my wife. There's a lot of good examples about how a Muslim man should treat women and how they should treat their wives, and we learned that from our Prophet. And going back to the other part of the question, if there will be peace in Syria, if there will be security in Syria, of course I will come back as soon as possible. And I'm looking about running for office or something. This is something I will never ever do. I actually hate politics, and I hate most politicians, to be honest. If you are going to become a politician, at some point you have to lie or do bad things. And I've seen enough bad things in my life for many lifetimes, so I'll try my best to stay away, to help as much as I can, but not ever run to office.
All right, Kassam, listen, I first of all, I want to say to you, I know there are points where I asked you some hard-hitting questions, and I appreciate you standing in there and giving your answers as you did. I appreciate you taking an hour out with us out of your day, and you know, we will reach out to you again in the future. I wish you nothing more than happiness and best luck. All right, I appreciate you being with Harlan and myself today. Thanks so much. All right, Tim, can you disconnect the feed? Don't go away. Harlan and I are going to discuss a few things here. All right, Harlan, what's your? Oh, the video got interrupted.
It should be gone.
No, it says here on Facebook that it got interrupted. The video has been interrupted. Sorry for all the caps cut off. You know, we may still be. Let me see if we're still on the walk and talk. What'd you say?
There's 25 viewers.
They said it just ended abruptly.
Yeah.
It ended abruptly.
How could that possibly be?
Yeah, you know what it is? They just shut us down. Bad ending, but great show, DML. Yeah, so it shows it's Facebook that Facebook is done. You know what? I'll tell you what we'll do. I think we're still live on YouTube. Are we still live on
Should be YouTube box.
huh?
He's checking the YouTube box.
We're still live on that?
Facebook cut us off.
Yeah, Facebook fucking cut us off.
You're live on YouTube though.
Am I? I just cursed. All right. All right, it happens. I get caught all the time with my dirty.
Somehow I haven't been caught, which is a miracle.
Yeah, I know. And you know, it's funny. You curse more than I do. When you curse, you go nuts.
I know.
All right, so here's what we're gonna do. Here's what we're gonna do for those of you who are on our live with YouTube. Can we right now launch another live on Facebook?
Yes.
And keep the YouTube in place?
Yes.
All right, so why don't we do that? Why don't we set another live? All right, so if you're watching us on YouTube or on the DML app or on DennisMichaelLynch.com, stick with us. We're going to be going back. I'm writing this on an alert. We were going back live on Facebook.com, DMLdaily now. Are we back on? Yeah. All right, no 3-minute countdown, right?
No, we're just going right into it.
All right, so we're going right into it. All right, so if you're with us on the Dennis Michael Lynch site, stay there, all right? We're going to be back. Let me see here.
Yep,
hold on, I'm doing
building.
Huh? It's building?
Yep.
All right, so let me go back here. Hold on. Bear with us.
You got 1,400.
We got 1,400 back?
Yep, we're good.
Okay, so we're back. Okay, so if you, I don't know, Facebook, it's amazing how they pick the cutoff times, right?
Yeah.
Video is interrupted as if we were done. We're not done, Facebook. All right, we're not done. In fact, we've just only started. All right, so I wanna speak to Harlan and everybody else out here. I'll try to read. If you could go to DennisMichaelLynch.com, you'll find it. We have the live chat on DennisMichaelLynch.com. We don't get cut off there. They cut us off on Facebook, but not on my own website. They don't got the power to do that. All right. So if you want to go to DennisMichaelLynch.com, you'll find it on the homepage. It's probably a couple down. You just find the walk and talk. You go there. We got a live chat there. So I'll read some of the stuff off that DennisMichaelLynch.com. But what was your take on that whole interview?
Well, one is, at the end I asked him if he's going to run for office, and he said no. He's absolutely going to run for office. And so I'm not sure why he didn't answer that directly, because it seems to me that he says he doesn't like politics, but he's overtly political. So it kind of, I respect the guy, I respect his answers, but I felt like at points he might be trying to divert our attention from some other motives that he has. But he was an interesting guy. He's got an interesting story. I mean, he has certainly endured more pain and suffering than any of us have, losing family and friends in this horrific way. So, and I respect him for coming on here and answering some tough questions. I mean, you didn't give him the white glove treatment. I mean, you were tough but fair.
Oh, I'm going to be tough on you.
Well,
Are you ready for me to be tough on you?
Yeah.
And you know how much I love you.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just telling my wife the other day, I said, this kid, Harlan, I said, he's like, becoming like a son to me.
Sure.
You can never again in my presence say that guy has outlived what I have and what many people have lived. He didn't have to jump 80 stories from the Twin Towers.
No, I'm saying.
Okay.
I'm saying.
Let me tell you,
here.
our people have been subjected to that piece of crap religion, where dirtbags evolve. All right.
Yeah.
Where 80% is good and 20% is bad. All right. I would like to see more Muslim leaders stand up and condemn their own people. You know what? I had a problem with this guy. I give him all the guts in the world, all the guts in the world to come on. He's coming on. And maybe you're right, Harlan. Maybe he is going to run for office, and maybe that's what it is. And I give him all the guts. But there's not a day in my life where I don't remember looking up at those buildings. And I understand what he goes through. I understand what they've gone through. We understand as a country they've gone through. Let me tell you, you watch somebody drop from 80 stories and smatter on the ground, that's just as bad as a chemical attack. All right, so to me, I listen to a guy like this, and here's my problem with him. He's fluid, and he can say everything, and he's nice and smooth the whole way through, and I get that. But when I ask him about the wife beatings, he's jumping all around, and that's a very easy question. Let me, I'll prove it. You ready? Do you believe in wife beatings?
No.
Okay, there you go. It's that easy. What did you have for breakfast? What did you have for breakfast?
He feels as though he has to defend his religion. And I think that's why because you're not asking just in terms of you as a person. I mean, you were setting it up in context of his religion, and he's in a difficult position to have to defend some of the things that are in the Quran.
No, he's not. You ready? I'll give you another example.
Okay.
Okay. I'm a Catholic. Ask me how I feel about the priests who touch little boys.
How do you feel about the priests that touch little boys?
I think they need to be hung upside down, and they should be imprisoned for the rest of their life for touching a little child.
Yeah.
There you go. I have no problem. I'll stand in front of any Catholic who wants to argue with me on that.
There are elements of the Bible that seem to condemn homosexuality too, and we choose to not interpret them in such a way that's purely literal. And his point is that he can do the same with the Quran, though I would contend, just as you do, that there are many more passages in the Quran that I find offensive than in the Bible.
Many more.
And the problem, to your point, and this is something we didn't bring up, which is why aren't there more leaders in the Islamic community standing up to condemn these radical interpretations? Because that is the question at the core of all of this. If you believe that this is being misinterpreted, then why aren't there leaders clearly standing up and condemning it?
And Harlan, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking. That's where, I'm reading some of the comments from the people on here. Yeah. Look, we always have, we've got. You think I'm hard hitting?
Yeah.
Some of the people on here make me look like Cinderella.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So my feeling was give the man a fair shot to say what it is that he wants to say. And yeah, you're always going to get champion points for saying go Trump, right? Especially with the go Trumpers.
Yeah.
But if you dig down a little bit deeper, like I think we did, to me, everything fell on that question about whether or not beating the wife. And instead of me saying, do you believe in wife beatings? And him just basically, like I did to you about the priests, right, with little kids, say, I do not believe in that, I condemn it. He went on the long story about how he has a Latino friend and a LBGT lawyer and all this other different stuff. And he just wouldn't say it. And then I think later on he thought about it and he came back to say, oh no, I don't agree with it. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. But that
what are
part
we
of it
accusing him of?
I don't know. That's a great question. That's a great question. I think the problem is, and I think what some of our viewership is going to have a problem with is, here's a guy blaming Assad, putting it all on Assad, putting it all on Assad, putting it all on Assad. I like that. I think Assad is a nightmare.
Yeah.
But here we have a guy, when you ask him about, I asked him about why it is, all Muslims are coming over here. And he's like, Muslims are getting, they're getting beaten, they're having it horrible. And then when I asked about how it was in Germany, I asked him point blank, and that's where I was going. I was going with the fact that in the Islam religion, women are treated less than men. It's basically that easy. And so I believe that sort of concept takes itself wherever they go.
Yeah.
And it's taken it to Germany. And what he did was he downplayed all these reports of women being raped. The rape numbers in these countries are going up. That's not by chance.
No.
That's not by chance at all. And so when I tried to bring that up there, he tried to make it sound like we were somewhat crazy in the sense that, oh, this isn't really happening. These are false. That's fake news. He actually classified it as fake news. And that's why when I come back and say, do you believe in wife beatings? These guys, for the most part, if you're going to interpret the Quran, if your wife gets out of line, you beat her. It's what it is. You beat her.
Right. Well, and in terms of Sharia, I mean, he seemed to try to gloss over that. I mean, in Afghanistan, according to a Pew report, 99% of Muslims there support Sharia. In Pakistan, it's 84%. In Iraq, it's 91%. So it doesn't seem to me that in many of these Middle Eastern countries, it is the minority that supports this kind of radical interpretation of the Quran. The facts don't back it up. Even in the United States, according to this Pew report, 51% support Sharia. So it's yeah, I wish we had brought this up to him, but I just got it now. It doesn't seem like it's a minority, like a vocal minority. It seems like there are a lot of Muslims that interpret it that way.
If you, there is a, I used to know these stats by
heart.
like the back of my hand.
Yeah.
I don't remember it anymore, the exact numbers, so I apologize in advance for just sort of being loosey-goosey with these numbers here. But there was, and I'm not sure if it was a Pew Research or it was another well-known name, who put out a question to Muslims in general. Do you believe in, basically killing infidels, chopping off their heads?
Yeah.
Do you support that sort of crazy violence? And there was a fraction that said yes, and a majority said no. But then the next question was, can you see that it's justified? And the majority said yes.
Wow.
Because look, if you look at the Quran, see what he said, 80%. 80%, yeah, it's the 20% that scares the living daylights out of me. It's the 20% why I've got airplanes crashing into the Twin Towers.
Right.
Absolutely. So I don't know. So overall, what was my interpretation of that interview? I like the fact that he shut down CNN, but you got to dig deeper, And my whole thing there is that, I'm waiting for the Muslim man who comes on this show, if there is one brave enough. I mean, I will give this here. I give him kudos for coming on.
Yeah.
I wonder if he comes back.
Well, so
Have my pen?
yeah, absolutely. There are two. Here,
thanks.
Take that one. There are two conversations that took place here. And one was on Syria and Assad and the murderous regime and his life as a victim of a sarin gas attack. And with that and his condemnation of Barack Obama and how he celebrated President Donald Trump's strong response to the most recent chemical attack, I'm totally with the guy. He's really articulate on it, and I think he's right. Where we diverted and there's more space between you and I and him is when he started talking about his interpretation of Islam. And that was much murkier. He's clearly thought about that and was prepared to discuss it much less. And so that's where I think there's a lot of daylight between us. And so I'm just looking at that conversation in two pieces. And in terms of the first piece, great. I thought he was a great interview, and you're not going to see that many places. The second piece, he couldn't stand up to trial.
No, and I'll tell you what, I don't know. I may, I don't know. I don't know how many people would actually support what I'm about to say right here, right now.
Okay.
But, and I'm not even asking you to respond. You don't have to say a word. But I tell you right now, if it was Barack Hussein Obama, Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, I don't care who it is. If the president of my country started to gas or started to bomb the people that live in this country, I tell you where I ain't going. I ain't going to Canada. I ain't going to Mexico.
Right.
I'm getting a gun and I'm going to fight. And if I die fighting for my country and fighting for my people, well, then that's my destiny and that's what I should do. And I die with my head held high. Yeah. This guy and other guys, healthy body, he's fleeing. I don't agree with that. To me, honestly,
I hear that.
That's weak.
So, but his response to that, and maybe he's just blowing smoke up our, is that they're pleading to be armed, that they're asking for munitions and weapons to go back and fight, to be part of this rebel force, and that the West and the United Nations hasn't given it to them. And that's a fair argument. I mean, if it really is harder to get your hands on a weapon, to me, looking at the Middle East, it doesn't seem like it's very hard to get your hands on an AK-47 or whatever else. So, maybe that's BS. I just don't have enough information to know whether that's true. In a country like this, where the Second Amendment is celebrated, and
not everywhere.
We have
not everywhere.
By people that would stand up when they would have the balls to stand up and fight a murderous regime. Right. We wouldn't have any problem arming ourselves.
No, we wouldn't. We wouldn't. So. And even if, look, I remember I don't even think you need arms. Even if I didn't have a gun, I'd stand here and fight. Give me rocks, give me whatever you have. I am not going
Assad's got tanks.
I'm not going to flee my country. You know what? I don't know. There's one guy who drives a tank. There's 50 guys who could surround it. I don't know. Maybe it's easier said than done. But I equate that to the fireman who runs into the building that's on fire.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Americans, we don't. You don't leave. You don't leave your country, and you fight it to the death. And that's just, I don't know. That's the way I'm born. That's the way I'm bred. Maybe I'm nuts. Maybe I'm not. I don't know. Maybe people agree with me. Maybe they don't. Maybe they'll say that I don't understand enough about what he's gone through. I don't agree with that. I think that Americans have suffered a great deal at the hands of Islamic terror.
I don't dispute that. Absolutely.
Yep.
What I said when I opened this is that he has suffered, based on his own description,
Yes.
immensely.
If you,
And-
yes. You were talking about physically.
Physically, yeah.
Okay, I will be the first one. I apologize then. I apologize. If you're going to equate, has Dennis Michael Lynch or Harlan Hill ever physically had to go through what he did as being somebody
Almost
who
dying.
survived a chemical
sarin attack.
I will say no. You know, when I survived 9/11, I survived outrunning a crumbling building. That is not. I did not have chemicals poured on top of me, so I'm not going to equate it to that measure at all. But at the same time,
Right.
you know, you can equate however, you know, he had a chemical attack. I had my fellow Americans jump in front of me. You know what? I don't know, Harlan. I don't know. Because I'll tell you what. There is I was with my daughter the other day. Actually, it's funny. When I fly, if I fly by myself,
Yep.
I'm fine. Man, it's amazing. I just had this conversation with my son yesterday. My son is considering, you know, he's coming to the end of his high school. He's considering, he wants to be a Navy SEAL.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
And his mother is like, you know, you can imagine, my
Yeah.
baby.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, I'd love to see you be a Navy SEAL.
Yeah.
You know, and he's athletic enough and strong enough and mindset that I think he could do it. And I said, you know, one of the things about being a Navy SEAL, I said, is that I don't believe Navy SEALs, and I'm not a Navy SEAL, but I'm speaking in the way that my mentality is. I am not afraid to die. I'm not afraid to die at all. I'm afraid of leaving my children too early.
Yeah.
You know, I still got one little one, and I fear that if I were not here for her, what her life would be. My other three, I'm almost like, I've gotten them through.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? I've gotten them through, and it's like, okay, if God takes me, I know they're okay to go on their own. I don't have a fear of dying. I have a fear of leaving them vulnerable, as if I haven't finished my job as a father. I said, I got a feeling that Navy SEALs are the same thing. They're not afraid to die. They're afraid not of completing the mission or completing the goal.
Or letting down their partner.
Yeah, or letting down their country.
Yeah.
And my son said, Dad, I watched a documentary on it. That's exactly what it is. Now, I never watched a documentary that sort of goes with that. But I had said to my daughter, we were talking about that conversation, and I said, if I'm on a plane, and I'm on the plane by myself, I'm fine. To be quite honest, I don't like flying, and I think it has, you know, to do with 9/11 or whatever it may be. But and if I go on a flight, if you and I have a flight and it's open seating, I tell you, I need to sit on the aisle. I don't sit anywhere else. I need to sit on the aisle. If Mary gets me a flight, she knows she has to put me on the aisle, because I'm on the mindset, if there's some psycho that gets up, I need to be free to take him down. That is my mentality. That's the way I do. I get on a flight, I look at everybody. I try to find a person. It may be a little psychotic on my end. It's just the way I am.
No, you're wired. This is your primal instinct.
I am
You're
there,
gonna
man.
Yeah.
I am there, and I'm looking forward, I'm looking back, and I'm looking all over the place. For anybody who looks a little out of sorts, I ain't gonna let them get to their spot. So, you know, I'll have a couple of cocktails, maybe I'm on the flight, whatever. You put one of my, or all of my kids and my wife on that flight, I'm a mess.
Yeah.
I'm sweaty, I'm a mess. I'm praying to God 15 times over, please God, I'm making promises I don't know if I could keep. You know what I mean? Everything. And it's because I don't want my kids to be subjective to a flight, you know, to a crash or to an attack or whatever it may be. And my daughter said to me yesterday as we were driving, I was driving her back to school, she said, Dad, I think that's because of your experience with 9/11. And because, you know, watching 9/11 on television is nothing like seeing it in real time. And so there's not a day there's simply not a day that goes through my life where at some point I don't think of something there. Some days, there are days, Harlan, where I can literally smell 9/11.
Yeah.
I get a smell in my nose and I say, my goodness, that's that 9/11 smell. I don't know what it is. And so, you know, do I think that I have been affected in the same way this guy has? You know what, I'm changing my answer. My answer is yeah. In the same way that this guy has been somewhat tortured by having that chemical attack, I have been somewhat tortured by having to see my fellow Americans jump 80 stories high and smash down splatter on the ground, one after the next. I have had the torture of thinking my brother-in-laws, who are New York City Fire Department, you know, in the New York City Fire Department, who both, believe it or not, were serving in the same house at the same time.
Wow.
Yeah, they're in the house, or they were in the house that had all the firemen die, wondering whether or not my brother-in-laws are dead.
Yeah.
You know, so those sort of things, you know, having to watch our family, because my whole family is a fireman family, having to watch, I'll tell you, my family on my wife's side still has not recovered from 9/11. We used to be a family that on Easters and on Thanksgivings, we drank and we'd laugh and we'd have a bunch of fun. And I mean, it was just wild. Ever since 9/11, watching my brother-in-laws, and my father-in-law was one of the top guys in the fire department, watching them have to bury so many of their brothers, they have never, ever been the same.
Really?
They have never been the same. Our family, well, we still love each other. Our get-togethers have never been the same. There's a part of all of us that is missing. So I'm going to say, yeah, I've gone through the same crap that guy has gone for, you know, Muslim extremism. You know, you can call it ISIS, you could call it Al-Qaeda, you could call it gassing, you could call it 2 buildings coming down. I am just as much as a victim as he is. Right. That's it.
Right.
You know?
That's fine.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's my take on it. People may disagree with me. Sure. That's their prerogative. You know, that's my take. So, you know, now ask me whether or not how I feel about wife beating. You know, my wife pisses me off all the time. All the time. She's going to piss me off tonight. I'm going to go home and I'm going to say, what's for dinner tonight? And she's going to say, I don't know, make it yourself. I'm going to say, are you kidding me? I had to drive our kid back and forth. I'm not going to beat her. No. She's not going to beat me. No. That's not what you do. No. That's not what you do. You know? Anybody who believes in that crap has no place, as far as I'm concerned, on planet Earth.
Obviously.
Yeah. Who beats somebody? No, that's these poor women. We played a video the other day on DennisMichaelLynch.com. I wound up seeing it. These 2 women, you know, they're Muslims. They're all in the Muslim garb. They got the whole thing on. They're talking to each other, justifying why it is that their husbands should be permitted to beat them. And I feel terrible for them.
I totally hear where you're coming from and agree with you. I'm just trying to give him the benefit of the doubt on the second bit, because I'm trying to think, if I were brought in to discuss, or I was being interviewed to discuss President Donald Trump, and then I started to go off on a conversation about religion, I might be unprepared for that conversation. And so eventually he answered it the right way, where he said, yes, I don't believe in wife beating. But it was a roundabout way where he's making a lot of excuses for himself and his religion in the process. And there are 2 ways to interpret that. One is he's unprepared. 2, he's obfuscating. He doesn't have a good, coherent answer for it. And I don't
or he's covering up. Or he's covering up.
Right. I don't know enough about him to make a determination on that. But it was very illuminating to see that he wasn't prepared to answer it like that.
I agree with you. All right, I'll tell you what, we'll take some of your questions here before we dive off. We've gone a lot longer today than we were supposed to. We're cutting into our filming of tonight's show. I don't even know what it is that we're talking about tonight. I don't think Harlan does either. But I'll tell you what, if you got any questions, go to DennisMichaelLynch.com, hit submit, send them to me right now. I'll take a look. We might have time to answer 1 or 2. I'll take a look at my Gmail now. And because that's where they go. When you go to that, it goes into a Gmail account that I get to check out. What else is going on in the world, Harlan?
Well, President Donald Trump's approval ratings hit 50%.
Get out of here. From where?
Rasmussen. So, yeah, that came out this morning. They do a daily tracking poll.
Good for
and
him.
just a couple weeks ago, he was at 42%. When we did the show Thursday, I told you guys he was up to 47, and now we're at 50. So, this is clearly in response to, one, his clear condemnation of the Syrian attacks, and also his really strong positioning on North Korea. This doesn't surprise me at all. Whenever this is testament to the United States of America, all of us, regardless of party, when we're in times of uncertainty. We saw it in the aftermath of 9/11 as the country rallied behind President George W. Bush. When we're in times of uncertainty, we rally together. And President Donald Trump has stood up as a clear leader to tackle this threat from North Korea, which, as we so clearly laid out last week, is a real legitimate threat. And it seems as though he's been able to quell it. We've averted any war or conflict, and the American people are saying thank you.
Yeah.
And that's what this approval rating is indicative of.
I love the way that he's handling so far China and North Korea, and even Syria for that matter.
Yep.
And I love the way he's handling that. I will tell you this: back here at home, you know how I am with the emails. I always see the trends.
Yeah, sure.
And the one trend that I'm seeing constantly is people are losing a little faith with him when it comes to immigration. They're seeing what I'm seeing. Guys are still standing on the corner of 7-Eleven looking for jobs. People are outside Home Depot still getting jobs. It's summertime, or at least coming close on summertime, and the construction stuff and the landscapers are all starting, and they're seeing the people who aren't capable of speaking English. They're not speaking English. They're still speaking in foreign tongue, and they're still seeing the guys that were working last year that didn't have the right to work there are working there, and they're getting a little frustrated with that. They're getting a little frustrated with DACA, deferred action for the dreamers. I'm getting the emails, and like I said, I see the trends. And the trends are going towards when is he going to address that? So I think that's something he needs to address soon. He's addressing it with the deportations. Sure. They're talking about doing the deportations of the gang members. The border apprehensions are down. People coming across are hitting all-time lows. We love that. That's the Trump effect. People want to see the stuff with jobs be approached in the same sort of way that he's approached these other things, with a sort of fiery resolve. And so that if I had to say one place where he's leaving himself open, that's the place. Yeah. But again, who's perfect? Throw the stone at the.
Well, the other thing is that he's been tweeting about this special race that we have tomorrow in Georgia. It's a Georgia congressional race where we have a super liberal Democrat running. This is an interesting race because people are interpreting it as a referendum on President Donald Trump. The seat that is going to be filled was left vacant by Tom Price, who is now obviously the Secretary of Health and Human Services. The problem for President Trump is that you have 18 people running. And if no one secures 50% of the vote, there will be a runoff. Now, that's the best case scenario for Republicans. It's possible that the Republican vote could be split between so many different candidates that the Democrat could win outright. And so this is something to monitor. This was also the former seat of Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. So anyway, President Donald Trump's tweeting about it. That's why I brought it up, because when he tweets about something like this, he elevates it to national dialogue, and obviously he must be a little bit concerned about the divided vote. I don't know why the Republicans didn't stand up in Georgia and say, you know what, we need to hold on to this seat. Let's consolidate our candidates to one strong one to go up against the Democratic candidate and walk away with this in a clear victory. And but they didn't do that. So, I mean, you talk about this all the time, how the Republican Party is divided and sometimes very ineffectual. And this seems to be a very clear example of it. I mean, if you've got, 7, 8, 9 Republicans running against really one strong Democrat, plus a bunch of other random candidates, how can you win? How can you win there?
You can't. You can't. Let me read to you some of the emails that we've got in, and then we'll wind this up. Jolene, I think I said that right, talking about our recent guest, how do you say his name?
Qasem.
Qasem Eid. Qasem Eid. Qasem said they mostly want to assimilate and follow the laws of the country they go to. Well, he needs to watch your movie that you did the show on Friday night. By the way, Friday night show we had a lot of comments on. I agree. Well, you go to Dearborn, Michigan, and try to find the assimilation there. I don't see it. You know, I don't see it.
No.
You know, so I don't think he has enough experience in really seeing what it is that we see. Sarah McRoberts says, if he was so proud of his religion, he would always be prepared to answer, especially controversial questions about his religion. That's sort of what you said. Sort of.
Look, I could probably come up with some verse in the Bible that would put anybody on the defense. I mean, if we spend enough time and we tried to find something, you could put anybody on the defense about any religious text. But the problem here is that you asked him a very simple question about his interpretation of the Quran, and he didn't have a very simple response to that. No. So in general, I don't have a problem with the fact that he can't explain every verse in the Quran. It's that this is a very clear-cut one that he should have been able to say no to.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to, this is a multi-paragraphed one, but I'm going to read the first paragraph here from Deb. I think it's pretty interesting. DML team, listening to your guest, I believe that organized religion is the problem in every country. It is the interpretation of religious books being shoved down our throats by another person standing in for that religion. We were all born free, and we should not put our focus on books that have been written and interpreted by people in religious power that want to control the masses.
Yeah. Interesting point.
Yep. It is, there's actually a lot of commonality between Jews, Christians, and Muslims. I mean, Muslims even believe in Jesus Christ. They do. They just don't believe that he was crucified, and they don't believe that he is necessarily the king of, or the Son of God. But that he was, all of us are created by God, and that he was born through some means that weren't normal, but that he wasn't necessarily the Son of God and he wasn't crucified. We should put a poll up on DennisMichaelLynch.com. Says, what do you think more wars are started over? Yeah. Money, religion, or oil? And I guess you could really say oil and money are two of the same.
But that question has a really good point, because if we started talking like you did, bringing up the question about his interpretation of the Quran, if we started talking about these things, we might be able to actually work through some of it, and not just sound bites, but substance.
Yeah, I didn't hesitate on the questions. And he didn't hesitate on the answers, except for, of course, the wife beating. I'm starting to get hit with so many.
They say I've lost my mind. What have I lost my mind about?
Muslims
really do believe in Jesus. They think that he was a prophet. I'm not BSing you.
Judy says, I cannot stand to watch other news stations anymore. I do like Fox News and usually record O'Reilly, Hannity, Tucker Carlson, and Judge Jeanine. But lately I'm so busy keeping up with your news reports that I usually delete the others, except for the Judge. I also am almost 74 and am very worried about what is happening to our country. What is your opinion of the angry patriot? I read that a lot, but don't have a lot of faith in their validity. What is that, a website?
I guess. I don't know.
I don't know.
There's a million fake, or
there's a million websites. You know what?
I don't know.
If to me is, if it's not a major outlet and it's not a name, like when I decided to launch DennisMichaelLynch.com, one of the reasons why I decided to launch DennisMichaelLynch.com versus YourNewsAndTruth.com is because it said, hey, I'm putting my name on the door.
Yeah.
That should mean something.
Yeah.
It should mean that I'm proud of putting my name on the door.
Right.
I'm not hiding behind anything, and I have to live with everything that's put up there and not put up there. So that's I don't know. I don't read these other websites, the stuff like that. My internet. All right, one more question and that's it. Blah 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 blah. Okay, this has nothing to do with this interview, but I'm getting hit with too many. Barbara Bradley says, I do not understand why folks want to see the president's tax return. Sometime during an episode of The Truth or The Walk and Talk, Could you please answer this question? A devoted fan. Well, it's funny. I think the reason why she's writing that is we actually put up a poll today. I'll give you the answers to the poll so far. I mean, it's still something in progress here. We put, do you want to see the president's Trump's tax returns? Vote yes or no. No is 98.28%. Yes is 1.72. So I don't think people really care at this point.
You know, if Barack Obama had refused to release his tax returns, I would have asked why, and I would have had an issue with it. If Hillary Clinton refused to, especially with all of the concerns that we had about the Clinton Foundation and pay for play and all of that, I would have had a problem with it. Every president in the modern era has released their tax returns. President Trump is, I don't blame him for it, and there's no reason, and I defended him when he said that he wouldn't because he was under audit. But I believe if I'm being consistent, if I'm being intellectually consistent, why do I give him a pass on this when I wouldn't give all these other people a pass? And I have to be consistent. Otherwise, I'm a cheerleader for him.
Yeah.
And I will continue to defend him as long as he has a good reason, which is that he was under routine audit. And if I were under audit, I wouldn't want to hand over my tax returns either.
Right.
But if that's no longer the case, and that's the excuse that we used for a long time, then what's the reason now?
You know, my feeling on this sort of sides with yours in the sense that you got to ask yourself, if this was Obama and Hillary, would you be demanding it?
Yeah.
And I can't lie, man. If I would be sitting here, if we're hosting a show and Hillary's not giving her thing, I'd say she's hiding something.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I could understand the call for it, but on a bigger scope of things, I don't really understand what it does. It's like, it's so what his tax return is. Look, just look outside your door. We know what the guy's done.
Yeah, absolutely.
He flew around on his plane the whole campaign. He funded so much of it on his own dime, if not all of it on his own dime. He's got all these assets all over the world. The guy's a success.
Yeah.
So what happens if you find one line item where he wrote off a golf trip as a business trip, and it was really a personal trip? We're going to hold him to the cross.
Well, it's more complicated. Even if he released his personal tax returns, that's only going to reveal so much.
It's only going to reveal.
To really get an idea of whether there are any conflicts of interest, which is what Democrats are after, you need the tax returns for all of his companies all over the globe, the hundreds of corporations. He says, you're never going to get that. No. So they don't really earnestly want to see what's in his tax returns. They're just using this as a political chip against him.
Did Obama ever release his college transcripts?
I don't think he did.
Well, when he does that, we'll release the tax returns. How does that sound? Yeah. Right? We'll go with that thing. But no, I understand what you're talking about. I mean, there are days when it's easy to get caught up with your, and I don't mean yours specifically. I mean, putting it out there, get caught up with your support for the president.
Yeah.
And there are days where you just feel like you're getting hit with a 2x4 in the back of the head, A, because you support him, and B, because the mainstream media is doing everything they can to take it down. So you feel as if you've got to get up this defense mechanism and fight back. I was just subjected to this last week. We had one of our writers on DennisMichaelLynch.com write an article about a real story that was out about Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah.
Mar-a-Lago had 13 violations against it from the health department. Now, anybody who has any experience with restaurants knows that the health department comes in there and they will basically find that your toothpicks are slanted too much to the north.
Yeah.
They need to be slanted to the south. Here's a violation.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why they stick you with these violations is because there's a lot of money to be made in the violations. It's the same reason why cops or anybody else has quotas, and they sit there and they say, hey, we got to get some extra speeders this week. So we all understand that those violations are part of the game. But at the end of the day, the president of the United States, the biggest person in the world, has a resort that got 13 violations about it. That's going to be news. It was news on Fox. It was news on CNN. It was on AP. It was news on all those places. And so we ran the story and we said the same thing. The violations were addressed.
Yep.
And there you go. It's a news story.
By electing not to cover something like that, you are making a determination, and that's bias.
I would lose credibility.
You would lose credibility.
I would
if
lose
you elected
credibility.
Not to do that.
You can't just put up the things that are favorable and pretend like the unfavorable are there. Well, people were kicking us in the shins. I mean, one person called me a douchebag, and that I've become a prick. Now, first of all, I didn't write the article, but it all happens under my umbrella. I'll take it.
Yeah.
But I had a guy send us an email, and I thought he basically said the same thing you did, and it was eloquent. He said, you know, these people who are kicking at you and throwing rocks at your head, they are the same people who have asked you, please keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Please keep fighting the fake news. These are the same people that would have questioned you why you didn't run the story if Mar-a-Lago was owned by Hillary or by Obama.
Yeah.
And they would have shared that a million times if it was Hillary or Obama.
Sure.
And so, you know, why is it that it's underneath Trump's umbrella, it's no big news, but if it was under Obama, it would be earth-shattering news? And so I've always taken the tack that if you want me to stay a credible person, if you want us to stay a credible agency, we need to report what needs to be reported.
Yeah.
You know, and
if you don't like it, you don't have to share it. You know, if you don't like it, that's your...
Look, there's always going to be a little bit of bias. I mean, to say that there's no bias, there's always going to be a little bit of bias. I'll give you an example of a little bit of bias. You just read out a poll for Trump that his approval rating is at 50%. I said, who did it? You said Rasmussen. I'm not surprised. Rasmussen always shows more favor towards a plus for Trump. If you take another one that shows, unfavorable most of the time for Trump, it'll be at 32%.
Yeah.
You know, so it depends on which poll you're looking at, obviously. So we want to tout the 50% one. We'll put it out there.
Yeah.
But when CBS comes out with something, you know, you got to do it too.
Yeah, but CBS got the election so wrong. I write off their polls.
Of course.
Rasmussen, you know.
Of course.
So there's a little bit of track record there.
Of course. All right, well, let's wrap this up. All right, well, listen, we appreciate you coming in today. We apologize for things that we don't have control of, like Facebook cutting short the interview before we were done, and that's why we went with the second live. But keep in mind a few things that you need to know. On the DennisMichaelLynch.com website, the Walk and Talk tab really should say Walk and Talk and the Truth. In fact, we should probably just change it to say DML TV. And therefore you go there, and then the two shows that we do all the time are always listed underneath there. Mark, our tech guy in Iowa, created a chat box. So we now have our first version of the chat box. So you can watch without interruption. You know that spinning you're complaining about. I have to get the experience through DennisMichaelLynch.com with the YouTube. I don't know if that same spinning's taking place. But if you're looking to have the chat sooner than later, we'd like to see you guys convert to over there by just staying on Facebook, especially if they're going to wind up giving us this limitations. I mean, the amount of people that send us stuff.
I know.
I can't find you. The other day, I told you this happened to me about 2 weeks ago. It happened to me the other day. I was trying. It was when you had you were interviewing the guy Dunitz.
Yeah, Dunitz.
I was traveling, had my cell phone, logged into my own account, and you were not appearing on my own account. I couldn't find you.
It's crazy.
I literally couldn't find you on my own account.
They're toying around with us, man.
I think I don't know what they're doing. But you know what? They can't toy around with my website. So if you go to DennisMichaelLynch.com, it's there, and the chat thing's there. And the same thing tonight for the Truth. If you go in tonight to the Truth, and you'll see that there'll be a chat box there, and you can talk with all your friends. You go on there, and it's pretty active. I mean, today, just while we were sitting there, we had 1,500 people on. So we had about the same number that we had on Facebook. So anyway, all right, well, listen, we are going to be back later on tonight, 8:30, with the Truth. I think Scarlett is doing a spot about the Syrian military. What does it consist of? How big is it? What is it? What is it not? Do you have any idea what you're doing for Holland on the Hill?
Come back to me.
That is a very sexy way of saying I have no freaking idea, DML. All right, I have no idea what I'm doing either. So stay tuned. We'll figure it out in the next 5 minutes. All right, until then, we'll see you later. God bless you. God bless our troops. God bless the President of the United States. And God bless anybody who is brave enough to come on here and speak to us, because we're not going to hold back questions. All right? So until later on, AB. See you later.